There we are. Welcome, Jamie. Welcome to Ops Experts Club.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. You're high on the list of people that we wanted to bring on Ops Experts because you know everything about everything.
Well, I appreciate that, but that's entirely true.
You know a lot of things about most things. How about that?
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take that.
Why don't you give us an intro, Jamie? Who you are, what you do, who you work for, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so who I am. So I'm Jaime Gnievos. I work for the Pedro Adao team, the challenge guy, Pedro Adao. And if I were to pick, I guess, what my main focus was, because I feel like I do about 100 million tiny things, but my main thing is technically kind of product management. And so in the concept of that where I work, we have a lot of training programs or products and communities. So I'm typically managing those. So that means building courses, training resources, community management, stuff along that line. So anything that kind of has to do with building those or creating, processes or operations or things around those communities and products.
Yeah. And that
a little bit all the things.
Yeah.
I guess that's where all the things come in. But I'm really lucky and blessed to have an amazing team of people who are able to fill in the gaps of things that I don't necessarily know.
And that's not small groups of people too, right? Like you're talking about communities of a lot of people.
Yes. Well, so I've mainly done like our challenges side of the business, but recently I've been kind of moving over into our what we call our 100X community and doing more things over there with their products and stuff. So yeah, there's, when you're dealing with both types of ginormous products, it's a big undertaking for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've been working with you guys and Pedro Adao for a while now. And yeah, we were just like, organization is massive.
Yeah. And we move fast.
Yep.
So you have to be fast. You have to think fast. You have to build fast. And yeah, we're constantly like evolving and changing too. So it's like, you're never doing, which is kind of exciting. Like you're never doing the same thing really.
Mm-hmm.
You're just building and creating, which I love to do. So it's exciting for sure.
That's cool. Yeah. I mean, you guys running at 100 miles a minute. It's pretty fun to watch actually too from the outside.
Yeah. I bet it is. I mean, you guys are you predated me working with Pedro Adao. So I've always experienced the company with you guys being there. So you definitely are like an integral part of helping us go that fast for sure, filling in the gaps.
Everybody's just running down the street with their hair on fire. Just
I know. And we sometimes joke it's not a joke, but we laugh about it, but it's very serious. We call Taryn like our security blanket. So like we're like, oh, Taryn's here. Okay, we all feel warm and comfortable now.
Taryn is panic button and yeah.
Until he goes on vacation and he's like, sorry, I'm incognito for the next 2 weeks. Good luck. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I didn't even it's funny that I didn't even realize how much he's a security blanket to me, just like knowing that there is like a Taryn panic button somewhere. And then so this week he's out of town. And so knowing that I don't have the Taryn panic button, and I was messaging Ben knows I was messaging like Ben and Aaron last night where I'm like, I don't know what to do because I can't get a hold of Taryn and I don't know what to do right now.
Yeah, it is. He's an integral part of us doing things the way we want them to do, work, right? Like, because you have an idea in your mind, you're like, it would really be amazing if it could work this way. And Taryn's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And then it works that way. And you're like, magic. And then he's not there. And you're like, I need the magic. I need the magic button.
So give us Jamie, in your role, I guess in your position within Pedro Adao's organization, give us your best story, something that you learned or you taught, or like was this like an aha moment over the last few years?
I'm definitely going to go in the learned category on that because I feel like I'm just constantly learning. But before I came to work with Pedro, I worked in the corporate world in human resources, in the banking industry. So we did things really slow. There was a lot of compliance and red tape, and it took a long time to get things moving. So I was used to an environment where you would like plan a project for a year and you'd work on it, and then it would get tested and released. And so my first couple months working with Pedro Adao was like, holy moly, I can't do this. Like, this isn't operations. I don't know what this is. I'm so overwhelmed. Like, it was crazy. But I have an amazing boss, Scott Benham, who you guys work with, and he's taught me a lot about just kind of working in that type of environment. But like, I feel like the biggest thing I learned is what he would call an MVP. And I'd be like, what do you like, the most valuable player? Like, what are you talking about? And he'd be like, no, minimal viable product. I'm like, what is that? Like, when I would create something, we would just create it like ginormous, right? Like, we'd have a huge project plan. But when you're moving as fast as we do, it's like, you're like, what's the minimal viable product I create? Like, what can I get to like just launch this out so it functions, and we can deliver on what we promise. So just kind of navigating and learning how to do that, I feel like has been a process for me. Like, I feel like I'm getting pretty good at it. Especially, I mean, it's been 2 years now, but and just understanding the value of it, right? Like, starting like at a very thin slice and not having to bite the whole thing off at the same time. And just sort of building slow. So, we'd build something super manual and be like, oh my gosh, like, how can we, build in some technology or use some integrations here to help us like not make this so cumbersome. So like, starting from a kind of manual process, you can easily see where you need to add in those pieces, right? So that was just a huge lesson, and kind of almost letting go of perfectionism. Like, it's almost like it's a mindset thing too. So it was like learning how to use that new skill, but like how to get rid of some of those beliefs. Like, I can't release this. Like, it's not perfect, So it's like, you don't even have time to think about if it's perfect. You have to go. So, so that was a huge lesson and a valuable lesson. So of course I would love to kind of always slow that down just a little bit, but it's been a useful skill, and just some like mindset shifts to kind of shift out of, and getting better at operations and building and creating things.
It sounds like too, like a lot of flexibility, like you have to be able to bend and move really quickly. Like, because I just from an operations standpoint, from like even my previous work, we moved quickly, but there were times where I'm like, nope, this is how it's going to be done. I don't care what you guys say. I want to do it like this. And that's, I mean, that works in some places, like maybe, like you said, HR in the corporate world, but in this world, you have to be flexible, and you have to be willing to be like, all right, let's go this other route.
Yeah. I mean, in all reality, like, sometimes Pedro's on stage, like, giving an offer, and we're like still in the background, like, we gotta plug this one last thing in really quick, Yeah, wait, I didn't hear that piece, So it's like, you're just like building like on the go, and it's crazy sometimes, but I mean, it's funny how fast like you can make things happen too. Like, sometimes you can just sit around thinking about things for too long, and then like you've moved on to the next thing, and that's like sitting on the table. So sometimes going fast like helps you just get it out there and get it done, right?
Totally.
So it's been super valuable, like, skill to learn and operate out of. So I'm grateful for that learning.
I think that's like the pros and cons of operations type people, right? Like, we're really good at like planning things out. So, okay, this is how it's going to go, A to Z. But then the con is like, we have the tendency to just like want to like marinate in our ideas and be like, this is a great idea. Let me think about it more and more and more. It takes somebody to go, hey, no, we got to go now. Like get it out now.
I also think we're just kind of wired to think about the what if scenarios, because we have to deal with the what if scenarios, right? So like, sometimes you could just sit around being like, let's build all the what if scenarios into what I'm building right now, so I don't have to deal with those what ifs. So yeah, you don't even have time to think about that when you're building fast. You're just like, we just got to make it go. and that's a good thing sometimes, I think. So, because sometimes your what ifs never really come to reality, but you spent a long time building those what ifs.
That is very true. Yeah, contingency plans. You're like, I need a contingency plan for everything, but then like none of those things ever happen. You're like, wow, I just wasted so much time. Meanwhile, your visionary is
It's so
like,
good to have us on the team though, so that we're already
yeah.
like mentally prepared because we've already worried about it
Oh,
17 times before it
Yes.
happens, and then we have a little bit of like, I told you, but then at least we thought about it enough that we can come in and swoop in and kind of fix it. But
yeah,
and
Pedro always says that's why I have you guys to like worry about the what ifs, but I don't ever
That's
he
what
never
you're
thinks
here.
that way. So it's kind of like a merging of like the thinking, basically. Like we just balance each other out a little bit.
It really is. And I think that's probably obviously why Pedro Adao is so successful too, is like you need somebody who's like that visionary is going to push people to go, but you also need the people who are going, what if? And if you have a really good balance of that, you have a really successful organization. It's when it comes off balance that like, if the operations people take over, then nothing ever gets put out for sale. And if the visionary takes over completely, then like stuff just burns down around you because you never have a chance to actually fix anything. I think it's a very good testament to your guys' balance in that sense of being able to have a foot on the gas and a foot on the brake at the same time and kind of go back and forth to keep things moving along how they should be. It's great to watch.
Yeah. Yep. I like it.
Feel like it's something that also like COVID has really like I feel like COVID has kind of shaped businesses the way that they are that way, because before like you could create a course and maybe you create one course in a year and you like spent all this time crafting it out and it's like the most perfect thing and people are all working, going to work, doing their thing, and so it takes them that long to get through it, and then so you have a whole other year to think of your next one. COVID, like everyone started being at home all the time. They blow through a course and they're like, okay, what's next? And I feel like that is part of what has propelled you guys forward, is that like someone finishes a program and they're like, great, I'm going to like up level my life. I'm going to do all this cool stuff. Like I use the word up level, guys. I joke. And then they finish it in a few weeks and they're asking Pedro like, okay, cool, I finished this part. Like, what's my next step? And it's like, well, I just gave this to you guys a month ago. Here you go. And then he just like creates something. And then, so it's like, you guys have been going like a mile a minute since 2020, because it's what the people want,
Yeah, it's interesting too how COVID changed a little bit what people want. Like even now, like we're still kind of rethinking like the way that we've done things in the past. We're like, we can't really do things this way. So how can we reimagine like how we build courses or how we build programs to like really focus on like getting people results, like giving them like the step-by-step like prescription for like how you get this done, and like follow this formula or follow this model. Like how can we break down our frameworks into like an easy like act, like taking action and getting things done. So we've been really trying to dive in deep to that, and not just training and teaching, but like getting people to like actually do stuff and be proud of what they've done, right? Like not just complete a course, but like run a challenge, like not just check things off the box, but actually have something in your hands when you're done. So we've really been focusing and reimagining in that space on how we can pull things to that level.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, right? You want people, who are consuming your courses and your educational material to like actually being applying it, like not just be like a lifelong student and never actually applying anything. They actually like one of those people who went to college for 12 years just because like I never want to leave.
Well, right. And we do community so well in all of our groups too. It's like sometimes people just want to hang out with us, like, and that's not bad either. But like, yeah, community is super important to us. So we're not only just like building products or, doing training, but we're building community and like creating a space for people to do that with each other, which, I think sets us apart too.
So let's go then. The next question is, what's the biggest hurdle you've had to get past yourself or get through in your last couple of years with the organization?
I wouldn't say that I've gotten through it, but something I'm really trying to navigate is boundaries. I think because the nature of our job is to want to solve and fix and create and build, there's never a lack of any of those things to do. And there's an abundance of them. So, it's easy. It's kind of scary how easy it is to slip into, I'll take on 100 million things. And then you're like, oh no, what did I do? So you're starting to like slip into doing something that's not really your main job. And like all of a sudden you have all these tasks and you're like, I can't possibly work like this anymore. So I think just recently we've just been more conscious about like, what are those boundaries? Like what does fall within the scope of my work? And if we have a gap, I'm not the one to fill it. Like, how can I find somebody else to fill it? Or how can we hire somebody to do that? Or, so like moving into that space is not easy to do.
Yep. I completely agree.
So I do feel like it's not really something that I've conquered or maybe that I ever will conquer, but it's definitely a huge awareness, not just like for work either, because when you start to notice things in one place, you start to see them everywhere else. And you're like, oh man, I could see how that's not just a problem at work, but that's a problem in my home life too.
It all goes together once we all started working from home. So like once we all start working from home, there's not like things all do bleed together. You don't have that like immediate stopping point. And then so it's so important and so hard to really like set yourself a blocked out schedule where things aren't just constantly getting on your nerves.
You almost have to fight for it and be really like weirdly strict about it. Like, and it could seem like, well, for me, I'm always like, I don't want to be mean, or I don't want to let down my team. A lot of that, like, I mean, we have an amazing team of people, and sometimes, it can feel bad when you're like, I'm not going to do that. And then, you're like, oh, I don't want to leave you in a lurch, so it's like, you're like constantly tugging on this tension of like putting on your own oxygen mask first before you start like trying to pick up everybody else's stuff.
That's a good way to put it.
Until you get burnout, then I feel like you're like, and you get a no, and you get a no, and you get a no. But the goal is to not get there before.
Right. That's like the bad side of it, right? Because like it's in a personality thing where you're like, I'll just do it. And then all of a sudden you explode on everybody. It's like, no, you've crossed the line.
I'm a jerk and I don't care.
I just recently, not recently, probably in the last few months, I was like, I need to start putting like lunch on my calendar, because I'd be like, just schedule an appointment with me. And all of a sudden I'm like, it's 3:00. I haven't been able to eat yet just because I'm trying to help people all the time, or have a meeting with a client. Finally, I was like, all right, I'm at least putting 45 minutes on my calendar that nobody can schedule with me, so I can actually eat lunch in the middle of the day. Because otherwise it's just like, it's the same thing. I don't like, we have these clients that we work with, and if they have an issue, like I want to make sure that I help them, but at the same time, like you start doing that with everybody, and all of a sudden your day is just gone and you haven't eaten yet.
Right. Yes. Those are very frequent days. I've definitely started blocking specific time off my calendar where I'm doing like focused work, like things that I, turn off my like dings, and people can't really get a hold of me. And then deep work where I'm completely off the grid and like I'm like deep into like developing or creating stuff, and then actually saying like whatever else is left on the calendar is just kind of general work and people can get a hold of me and I'll check email or Slack or whatever. But like really getting crazy strict about blocking those times off my calendar and what I will do in those times, like knowing like in my like planning my week out, like I have these many blocks of focused work, like what do I need to put in each one of those blocks, so I know going in what I'm going to do. Because if I don't do that, like I'll just do whatever is like in front of me. So that's a great pro tip for people. Schedule out like general work, easy work, deep work. I think that's a great idea. It's probably
and you guys rolled that out company wide, right? Like you guys made that like a company culture kind of thing. Like I love that you guys did that. So everybody, it's not a privilege. It's like, it's a necessity.
Yeah, we get permission to do that, which is pretty awesome. Because a lot of times you can feel like you don't have permission to do that. Like you have to be available all the time. And that's when people's boundaries start getting crossed, and there's so many like blurred lines, and you don't know how many hours people are working every day, just to get things done. And just like you said, Ben, like somebody, you want to help people, like somebody slacks you and they're like, hey, I need this done, and you want to jump in and help, but sometimes you're like, oh, I can't get to that right now.
Yep. I'm curious, like did you notice a big difference between like your previous, you said your corporate HR job and moving into the entrepreneurial space? Was it like a big shift, like trying to, because I know in the corporate world, everything is very structured. Like this is your role, you do this, nothing else but this. Was it a big shift going from like, I do this one thing to now like, I'm wanting to help everybody with everything and trying to hold myself back?
That's a really good question, because I actually left the corporate world because I didn't want to be boxed in. Like I hate having to do the same thing every day. Like I need variety. I need to be able to make impact where I can. And the corporate world is very structured about roles and responsibilities and not crossing boundaries. And so I left for that reason. But like that kind of freedom has to be managed, right? Like you don't just jump into that and everything's like fantastic. You know, it's very overwhelming, especially when you're used to structure. So having like the company invest in us and like do that like leadership training where we learned that helpful tip of like how to use your time and how to manage your time well when you have so much freedom, was amazing, you know, value for us. And then permission to actually, you know, say no or to have boundaries. So I think that's been very helpful. And it was a tough transition. Like there were days where I was like, yeah, there were days where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I made the wrong decision and I should probably leave, and nobody would notice.
They would notice. They would notice. They would for sure notice. Something that I noticed. Sorry, keep going.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to talk about like leaving a very structured space. And then I like personally, I jumped from the structured space into motherhood, which I feel like there's no setting boundaries. That doesn't exist. But then from there being deep in motherhood and then getting the chance to work virtually, and like you said, like seeing like the freedom that you get from being to work virtually and working for an entrepreneur and what that means. And without having that structured, like you work from 9 to 5, just getting so excited that you just go all in, where I was working, like, I had like a new baby and I was working like 50 hours a week because I was just so excited. And then I did reach the burnout stage and everything.
Yeah. It's real. It happens and it sneaks up on you. That's what I said earlier. It's like, it's scary how much you just can naturally flow back into overwhelm and not even notice until you're, you know, there. You're not in a good place. So
that was I mean, my last line of work, it was we were definitely weren't corporate structure at all. We were pretty fly by the seat of our pants too, but it was like leaving that company and coming to work with, say, the collab team. It was great because obviously I got to start working from home, but it was like that previous company, it was like the expectation was you're always on. Like no matter what, like you're answering emails at 9 o'clock. So like leaving that, I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have to do this anymore. And then come into the collab team where it's like, yeah, you know, you work when you want, you set your hours. I was like, but maybe I should answer an email at 9 o'clock tonight. You're like, you don't have to do this, but changing that mindset, I guess, kind of like you're saying, which is very difficult for operations people, because you're just like we said, you want to help everybody. You have to literally force yourself to say, no, these are my boundaries, like you said, you know, this is what I'm going to do. Otherwise, my natural tendency is I'm just going to burn myself out all the time if I'm not careful.
Yeah. Because it's weird. Your mind's like, it's just a little email. Like I'll answer a little email at 9 o'clock at night. And then the next thing you know, it's like the new habit. You're answering emails every night at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m.
And setting expectations with your team, right? So if you have someone who is more of a night owl, or like, heaven forbid, there's some of those people that just like only need 4 hours of sleep a night. Like, and are you one of those people?
No. I'm like, give me 10 hours of sleep, please.
Yes. So there's some people that just like that is the norm for them. And then so I feel like when you give that little inch and you respond at 9 o'clock at night and you start saying yes to them, and they're like, oh, I found someone who works like me. And then they just start sending you all the things. And then harder to roll back that expectation than to just kind of like cleanly set it out in the first place.
That is very true. My mom always says you teach people how to treat you. And so that's a pure example of that.
Yeah, that's very fair. So what's on here's a curveball for you, Jamie. What's on the horizon? What's new coming up? Do you have any big plans, projects coming down the pipeline?
I mean, probably the biggest thing coming for our company is the Wisdom Challenge, which we do every year in January. So this year we are actually like planning early. So like we've dove into like getting things scheduled, getting things created and built. So I'm super excited about like the opportunity to have that like pre-planning, even though like I would love like 6 months or a year to plan it, but you know,
I was sneaking on you guys in Slack. I was super stoked for you guys when I saw that you guys were planning out January. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Isn't that cool? Like we've never planned out that early. So that's pretty exciting, which comes with that, like our conference, we have a March conference. So like the Wisdom Challenge kind of leads into that. So we're even doing things to plan for that March conference right now too, which is huge for us. So I do like, there's kind of a shift going on where we're like, you know, planning some things out. Like, you know, we're gonna operations and entrepreneurship is gonna meet in the middle on this one. So it's exciting. Great. Yeah. Well,
Jamie, it has been a blast having you on. Any last words of wisdom you might want to give the folks when it comes to operating inside of an entrepreneurial business?
I mean, I think for me, I've talked about like the ones that are really most important to me right now at this moment. So I think being really clear about your boundaries is probably the biggest step.
Yeah.
But I think that just comes with time, right? And paying attention to what you're doing and kind of like being aware of what you're doing instead of just running an autopilot. So I've gotten to the habit of really tracking my things that I've done, which is kind of irritating at first, but it really helps you give a clear picture of where you're spending a lot of your time. And so when I'm feeling super overwhelmed, I'm always like, all right, I got to go back to tracking what I'm doing because obviously I'm doing something wrong again. So
That's smart. That's smart. I mean, people do that with their meals and calories, right? Why not?
I was just like, it's like a food diary. I love that. A work diary.
Yeah. When you're working fast and you're creating and building new things and managing old things, it's really important to just kind of always take a snapshot of what's happening and then readjust and reevaluate and re-choose, really. I mean, that's really kind of what we're doing at all times. Nothing ever stays the same. So why should the way we're doing work always stay the same?
I like that. It's great. Words of wisdom from Jamie. Everybody.
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming on, Jamie.
Yeah.
It's been a
Thanks
blast.
for having me. Yeah, it's been great talking to you guys, and I love working with you and partnering with you guys on all the things. You guys are amazing.
Yeah, we love working with you guys.
Yay.
Happy Thursday, all.
Yes, happy Thursday.